This is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Welcome to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Your host, Felice Gerwitz, is an author, a publisher, and your radio show host. She will encourage, educate, and inspire you with answers to your most pressing questions from homeschool, marriage, parenting, and much more. Felice loves to equip moms to live a Christian life because every moment counts. Be sure to visit her website at mediaangels.com. And here's your host, Felice Gerwitz.
Well, today I'm going to be talking about Homeschooling 101 Help. And I have a bunch of fun things I'm going to share with you, but I really wanted a podcast that was going to be a nutshell version of, what could possibly be several hours of talking about how to get started homeschooling. And the reason I wanted to put this together is because I'm going to talk more than just about homeschooling starting out. I'm going to talk about where to get help as a homeschooler. So if you are struggling or you have a problem and I don't address it in this podcast, please feel free to reach out to me. One of the ways you can do that is go to vintagehomeschoolmoms.com and look for this podcast. It's Homeschooling Help 101, or it's Homeschooling 101 Helps. I don't remember I never remember what I call these podcasts as I'm doing them, but you can look for that podcast under the Vintage Homeschool Moms, and one of the great features is on that front page. You can do a search on a topic and you will find it. So if you put in, Homeschooling Help 101, you'll find this podcast, and there you'll find the post, and you can hit reply and leave me a message. So that would be great. Or you can reach out to me at felice@mediaangels.com. So let's talk about getting started. And the reason I want to do this again is because I recently had someone tell me they were thinking about homeschooling and wanted a nutshell version. So these are just some major points on how to start homeschooling. And usually we start out with, oh gosh, what books are you going to get, or what curriculum, or what ages are your children? In today's world, it is legal to homeschool, so that's good news. And so the first point I want to make, number one on the list, is find out what the legal requirements are in your particular state. One way you can do this really easily is go to the hslda.org, and I will have all of these links on my post under vintagehomeschoolmoms.com, episode 182. So if you go to HSLDA, I believe it's .org, it's the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and they have this really nifty little map. And all you have to do is click on your map, and that gets you to where you need to be, that has all of the different states and what the requirements are. So in some states, they are a little bit pickier than in others, but the really awesome thing is that it is legal to homeschool, and you want to be sure that you're in compliance. The other thing is to find a local support group. And how do you do that? So, the second thing would be to find a support group. So you can either, look online for your area, or you can contact your local church. Many of our churches know about our support groups for homeschoolers, usually the bigger ones as well as the smaller ones. So that would be a great thing to connect with other homeschoolers and get some support that way. The third thing, which is really a kind of a spin-off of number two, a support group, is to find out what kind of activities are available for homeschoolers. I remember one year we had the ice skating rink here in Southwest Florida that was open on a specific day in the morning to homeschoolers. So even though it interrupted our school day a little bit, I believe it was at 11 o'clock to noon, it was a great opportunity for our children to learn how to ice skate, and also to count it as PE each day that we did it. So it was a fun time for the kids, and also it was great for the moms to be able to sit around and talk. So there's all kinds of activities for homeschoolers in particular, and lessons and co-ops and things like that. And a co-op is typically a group of moms will get together and they will do group activities with their kids. There are more organized things. Carol Topp has a show on the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network called Dollars and Cents, and she talks about co-oping. And then also, if you go to the front page and you search for the word co-op, it's C-O-O-P, you will find a show that's in its archives right now, but it was all on co-oping, and it's a great show. Number 4 is, what kind of a method are you thinking about using? So I've got a couple of links I'm going to talk about later as well on that topic, but there's so many different ways you can teach your kids at home. You can use the regular textbook or workbook approach. You can do a unit study approach, which is taking one topic and really delving into it and then bringing in all of the other academics. There's a Charlotte Mason approach. There is an eclectic approach, which means doing a lot of different things. Charlotte Mason obviously is her philosophy on education. There are more than I can think of this second, so I'm going to kind of stop there. But also in looking at homeschooling, there's other facets such as how your child learns best. So if you have a larger family, it may be a little bit more difficulty. You'll have a little bit more difficulty in tuning into how your child learns best. But I'm going to tell you something that when your kids are little, as much as you possibly can do that is all-inclusive and hands-on, with little kids, the messier the better, depending, of course, on your kid. And that is really a fun way. And the reason I know is my background is elementary ed with an emphasis in early childhood education, and then I have K-2 through 12 certification in specific learning disabilities. So my academic background kind of covers the gamut, but with the preschoolers and the little ones, I was just talking to my daughter the other day, and we were talking about some sound recognition, and I said, grab that salt box. And she goes, no, I have it. It's right here. I just need to use it. So little kids love to trace letters in the salt box or sandbox if you're outside. All right, and then number 5 would be, where do you find your resources? Of course, everyone can just jump online and find it that way, and I'm going to give you a bunch of different resources that are in the form of podcasts, which I'm going to share with you right after our commercial break. And the 6th way is to attend homeschool conferences. For many years, I attended a homeschool conference, and it was our state convention, and it was great because it allowed me to look at a lot of different curriculum choices. If you're a new homeschooler, you might want to start with a smaller, maybe more local event if there is one in your area, because it can be overwhelming. So attending a book fair or a larger homeschool conference or a state conference is a great way to find a lot of curriculum and get help. So the biggest step in homeschooling for a new homeschooler is, first of all, to, find out the legalities of it and go through some of these other steps. And as you can see, the last one on the list is curriculum. So it's usually what starts out as the number 1 on the list, and then, people backtrack. So I thought that was a good list. And again, you can find it on vintagehomeschoolmoms.com. And you can look for podcast 182 and Homeschooling Helps 101. We're going to take a really quick commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to share with you some specific links on our Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network that you can get some really good topics answered for. Transitioning out of public or private school and into homeschooling, and that podcast covers that topic. So if you are starting as a homeschool parent and you are bringing your kid home from another school, there could be a little bit of a transition issue, especially if your child doesn't want to be homeschooled. So that's a good podcast. Another is more of a general topic, and that was by Colleen Kessler on a Mommy Jammies Night episode. And she did it on nurturing and celebrating creativity. So she has some children. I believe all of her children are gifted. And so she was a learning specialist in the gifted area in the school system. She is now a homeschool mom, and on podcast 31 on mommyjammiesnight.com. Again, I'll have all of these links on the show notes on Vintage Homeschool Moms. So that's a great one. Organizing your home and homeschool year. That's podcast 93 that I did on Vintage Homeschool Moms. And I'm going to share with you that I am not the most organized person in the world. My heart is to be organized. My actual execution is not. So there I really show you how I scheduled out my day, and I will give you some information there that I believe will be really, really helpful to you. I even have some before and after pictures there. Podcast that I want to share with you is Can We Be Friends with Our Children? And I'll have the link on the website there. And the reason that's important is sometimes as homeschoolers, we get very, very close to our kids. And when that happens, sometimes our children overstep the bounds. I remember my husband and I were buying a car, and my kids were like chiming in with the kind of car they wanted. And we were looking at each other going, what? You don't have an opinion in this. We're buying the car. But it hit me that because our children are with us all the time, they really sometimes forget, you're the child, you're the student, and we are the parents. So sometimes there's a little bit too much familiarity going on there. So just a podcast I did on that topic. And then a great podcast I did, Curriculum and Learning Styles with Kathy Duffy. Again, I don't have that particular podcast number, but I will put that link in the show notes. And that's a great one because it not only talks about curriculum, but it talks about finding curriculum that really matches your child's learning style. And then the great thing about looking at learning styles is that, yes, there's always some overlap, but you'll learn your learning style as well. And I know mine is just to read it in a book, or I can take notes and then I remember what I've learned, whereas some of my kids just wanted it read to them. They were more auditory learners, and those are the kids that it's great to, do some audio learning and things like that. Okay, so I'm going to go take a break from individual podcasts, and I want to just share with you some podcasters on the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network that are topic specific. So let's say you have a child who is college bound, then that show would be College Prep Genius. Not only does she talk about acing the SAT, and it's an awesome show, and I know because I co-host it with her. Jean Burke is renowned for her ability to really cut to the chase and get to specific issues. But it's everything college prep. We even have shows on getting ready for college and planning and things like that. Brain Coach Tips is another wonderful podcast that is by Dr. Jan Bedell, and that one is specifically for children who have some learning challenges, everything from, spectrum of autism all the way to, special needs to gifted. So she has some amazing suggestions on her podcast that are readily available for you on the network. Another is Dollars and Cents Show, and I mentioned Carol Topp a little bit earlier. She has a lot of episodes for your teenagers or even younger kids who want to start their own business. She does a whole series on micro business for teens, so that's available. And she has a really great program out there. It's called fasttrack.microbusinessforteens.com, and I will include that link as well. And that is a self-paced course that helps you work through how to set up a business and how to be successful in business. Another great podcast is Mr. D Math, and that's all high school math curriculum. Mr. D has math curriculum as well, but he also podcasts on the topic of teaching your kids math, and it is wonderful, and he's got lots of high energy. And then Homeschooling High School is the podcast to listen to if you have a homeschooler who is in high school. So check that out, and there's a group of girls that do that, and they do a fabulous job with that podcast. And then I'm not going to be able to say this, Homeopathy for Mommies podcast is all on health and wellness, and that's with Sue Myers, who is a homeschool mom of many. And that's what I love about this network is the prerequisite for getting on to this network and having a podcast is to be a homeschool parent. So all of these guys have homeschooled or are homeschooling. So then I did a series of podcasts. I'm going to go back to those on Homeschooling 101. So I did Homeschooling 101 elementary years and Homeschooling 101 middle school years. And so elementary years is podcast 129 with my buddy Meredith Curtis. We host a once a month podcast on vintage homeschool moms the very first Monday of the month. And we did that one together, and she's got some great lists on there. And then Homeschooling 101, the middle school years, and that has some great information there on that particular topic in those years. And then some fun homeschool IRL podcasts. There's Homeschooling in Alaska 101. It's podcast number 101 with Homeschooling IRL. Homeschooling in Real Life with Kendra and Fletch. And then they also did a Homeschooling in Hawaii podcast. So you'll want to listen to that one, and that's on podcast 118. So teaching methods, I talked about this a little bit earlier. This podcast is actually on help. I want to change my teaching methods. And you could be a new homeschooler. You could be midstream and going, oh my gosh, I am not liking our year and I want to change everything. What do I do? So that's a great podcast on that topic. If you want to change your method, you're tired of doing textbooks and you want to go to unit studies, or you're tired of doing unit studies and you want to go to textbooks, or you want to add more field trips in your year or more science experiments or whatever that is, that podcast will help you. And then I've got some really great how-tos. There's a teaching history and a book list, and I did an interview there. Again, the link will be on the podcast. And how to teach your kids piano for free. That was with Melanie Wilson, and she did a podcast with an interview there on how to do that. I have a teaching checklist podcast, which I've got a couple of those, and again, I laugh when I look at these topics because I am not a list person. I do create some lists, but I wish I would do a better job. I mean, my New Year's resolution, I believe it was a couple of years ago, was on making a list and actually looking at it every day. I make lists, but then I don't look at them again because remember I told you my learning style was writing it down and then I don't forget it. So that's one thing. So I've got two. One was teaching checklist and one is back to homeschool list. The teaching checklist is podcast 49 on vintage homeschool moms, and the back to school list is podcast 96. So that will help you with getting back to school if you are starting school, or even as a new homeschooler, that would help you. Another podcast this is one of my things that I love to talk about, and that is giving your kids time to find their passion. I wish I had had time as a kid to explore what I like doing, and I think that really helps your kids know what they want to do when they grow up, or at least, find things that they're passionate about. And that's on podcast 48 on vintagehomeschoolmoms.com. And then I did a great podcast with my friend from Truth Quest History, and we did one on living books, and she does a lot of stuff with starting a home library and how to start, like a classical books home library. That's the classical approach. That's another approach on a lot of people use for teaching. So that I forgot earlier. So that podcast is podcast 81 on vintage homeschool moms. And then I've got some great podcasts on just reading lists. There's for books. There's a summer reading list podcast. There's that's podcast 84. There's a must-read books podcast of our all-time favorites, and I did that one with Meredith Curtis, podcast 85. Both of those are vintage homeschool moms. And then my friend Mary Jo Tate, who absolutely loves books. If you see her Facebook page, if you know Mary Jo, invariably at least one time a week she'll post something that is bookshelves. So she did her show is actually in the archives right now, but you can still get hold of the show, and it's Flourish at Home podcast, episode 24, How to Choose Good Books. What books you should read. And like I said, there's some really great lists on this network. Well, I hope that helps you with a lot of different topics. And I really wanted to recap today because sometimes these podcasts are completed and they're on the site and people just don't even know they're there. So if you go to Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network, look at that right-hand sidebar and find the search feature, and you can just type in any topic you're looking for, and I bet we'll have a podcast for you. And if we don't, message me on Facebook or email me at felice@mediaangels.com, and I will be sure to let one of our podcasters know. Take care, everyone. God bless, and have a wonderful time homeschooling, and you know where to come if you need help. God bless. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Visit Felice at mediaangels.com and thevintagehomeschoolmoms.com. Vintage Homeschool Moms is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.